April 1990 was the month when the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles dominated at the box office. Sinead O'Connor went straight to #1 with the cover of Nothing Compares to You. David Lynch changed television forever with the debut of Twin Peaks. And issues of GamePro, Zzap, and Nintendo Power took over the newsstands. These are just 3 of the magazines that we're going to be looking at today when we rank the best and worst magazine covers of April 1990. Oh man, we're going to kick things off in the most predictable way possible. And of course I mean checking in with Electronic Gaming Monthly. This is issue 9, which is obviously right at the beginning of their 2-decade run. You can tell that this is early EGM because this cover is crap. It's just so bad. Honestly, if they had just used the Castlevania 3 Cross as the full cover, I would have probably liked it a little bit more. But what's with the screenshots at the bottom? They aren't even different parts of the game. And considering just how great the Castlevania art has been over the years, this feels like the worst way possible to sell the game. Man, I love Castlevania 3, I really do, but this is a bad cover. I give it a 1 out of 5. Hey, remember when Game Players was the leading magazine of video and computer entertainment? Well, apparently that was back in April of 1990. Look, I've never been a real big fan of Game Players covers, and this Iron Sword design is just not doing it any favors. Part of the problem is that the white and the very shiny silver armor make the whole thing look washed out. Like the whole thing would just blind you if you took it out into the sun. On one hand, it's a little bit better than the Iron Sword cover over at EGM, which was just the Fabio enhanced box art. But I don't know, I really don't like this design. It looks cheap and just thrown together. And I'm picky too, I don't even like the way he's holding the sword. The whole thing is just so awkward. I'll give it a bonus point for being original art, but I can't go any higher than a 2 out of 5. Now hang on a second, is this the same Game Players? As you can tell from the title, this is Game Players' PC Strategy Guide, which is its own magazine, sure, but still connected to that dumpster fire that we just talked about. You gotta admit, this is a massive step up from the terrible Iron Sword cover. In case you don't recognize it, this is actually the Champions of Kryn cover art, and it's legitimately epic. Is that cheating? Sure, but who cares because it's eye-catching. Especially when compared to the other magazines released in April. I just can't justify going all the way up to a 5 for reused art. So, Game Players' PC Strategy Guide will just need to settle for a 4 out of 5. Now, while we're on the topic of reusing box art, we might as well talk about Computer Gaming World. Look, I'm gonna sound a bit down on this cover, but it's not because I think it's bad. I actually really like this loom design. I think it's honestly one of the most striking game boxes of all time, even if it doesn't even come close to hinting what you do in the game. The problem is that Computer Gaming World has such a long history of publishing some of the greatest magazine covers of all time, many with original artwork. To see them slum around in the same depths as Game Players is a big disappointment. I don't know, I can't give this more than a 3 out of 5, but know that I really want to. Only 10 months after kicking things off with the iconic Super Mario Bros. 2 cover, Nintendo Power has done it again with Mario 3. This is from that era when Nintendo Power was doing a lot with models, and the attention to detail here is impeccable. I love that we get a nice cross-section of bad guys, along with the pipe and a whole stash of gold coins. Best of all, it has Mario in an action shot, just flying around in a raccoon suit, something that's brand new to the hotly anticipated sequel. Sure, if you look close enough, you'll notice that it appears to just be on a table. But I don't care because I love everything about this cover, from the models to the color choices. I honestly like this more than the Super Mario Bros. 3 box art, so of course I'm going to give it 5 out of 5. Alright, if you want to know what inspired me to start this series, look no further than this GamePro cover. Is it good? Maybe? I mean, it's not bad. Or maybe it is? Honestly, it's so weird and goofy that it's kinda hard to tell. The assignment was to come up with a cover highlighting the jam and joysticks, and even though there are exactly 0 joysticks on the cover, I still really like the theme. Name me another magazine cover where the controller is using the human as a gamepad. And it's weirdly violent too. That one pad with the big nose and trucker hat literally twisted Howdy Doody's head all the way around. And do you see the cord that's going straight through his ears? That's gotta hurt. I can't give this a perfect score, but it definitely would have caught my eye back in 1990, and that alone is worth 4 points out of 5. Alright, before we take a trip overseas, let's first check in with our final American magazine, Video Games and Computer Entertainment. Instead of advertising a single game on the cover, the design is more about celebrating a certain type of game, specifically the whodunit. Crime games that have a real emphasis on solving the case, like Police Quest 2, King of Chicago, and H.B. Harold's Murder Club. I really dig this noir design, as well as the use of color. And what's cool is that it's not a Dick Tracy-style hero shooting a gun at the gangsters, but rather it's just a guy jotting down details. I'm not always a big fan of the way video games and computer entertainment draws regular people, but I gotta say, this cover worked for me. I'll give it a 4 out of 5. And that brings us to Ace, which was celebrating the art of the states, because this is the special American issue. Look, I suppose I should just be happy that the cover isn't some fat dude eating a hamburger while shooting a gun, but this zoomed in close-up of the flag isn't much better. And did they really need to write Yankee Doodle in big text right next to the logo? Oi! This cover sucks. 1 out of 5. If you were collecting issues of computer and video games in the early 1990s, then you already know this template all too well. In case you're wondering, yes, CVG did in fact dedicate a whole cover to Dynasty Wars, one of Capcom's lesser-known beat-em-ups. In fact, this cover is awfully similar to what US Gold ended up using when they ported the game to Amiga and the ZX Spectrum. I will give them a point for actually redrawing the art, but let's not go crazy. This is a 2 out of 5 at best. Alright, I had to include this issue of Zzap just to prove that the Brits actually did know how to make eye-catching cover art. On paper, this Formula 1 design sounds insanely boring, yet the cover is anything but. While the lead car may initially catch your eye, the real action is happening in the background, where at least 2 cars are getting into an epic crash. It's the kind of multi-car pileup that sends somebody to the hospital, or worse. What it does is it makes F1 look exciting as hell. Honestly, Electronic Arts probably should have used this as the box art. I'm telling you, it's a million times better. 4 out of 5. Now here's a first. PC Engine Fan is the first video game magazine that I've ever had to edit just to get past the censors. Okay, look, there's no question that this magazine cover would have caught my eye, especially back in 1990. You know why, I know why, everybody knows why, it's no mystery. But does that make it a good cover? Well, kind of. I like the look of these 3 characters, but they aren't really interacting with each other. And a lot of the cover's real estate is used up by the plain, flat desert setting. I like skeletons and naked women, but this cover leaves me with a lot of questions. 3 out of 5. And finally, we're checking in with Famesu, the final word on games. Unfortunately, I can't read very many of those words, but I do love this artwork. As is so often the case, we see Neki the Fox slumming it in another video game. Now, is it just me, or does it kind of look like he's pretending to be Maximo? I mean, I know that he's not. That game came out more than a decade after this issue. I flipped through the issue trying to figure out what game it was supposed to be, but I ultimately gave up because it doesn't matter. No matter what the game is, I love Neki's confident stance, even with death coming at him and a blonde-haired beauty next to him. I love the style and the fact that it reminds me of Ghouls and Ghosts. This is just a great cover all around, 5 out of 5. So there we have it. April 1990 is in the books. We'll be back next month looking at a whole new year. Where will we go and what will we see? Find out next time when we look at the best and worst magazine covers. Hey, thanks for watching me analyze these classic magazine covers. This is one of the new shows that I'm debuting this year, so let me know what your thoughts are. And also, let me know if you have ideas for future episodes. Now, here's the question I have for you. What were the best and worst covers of April 1990? That's right, I want both the best and the worst. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we're going to be back shortly with a review of that Indiana Jones game. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,